Margaret Mead said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." A more efficient way of using the resources critical to our survival needs to be developed. We are faced with shortages, inefficiencies, and ever-increasing consumer demands. In this presentation, we will characterize the problems facing us associated with climate change and historic and present government and business practices, and present the Clean Technology Trade Alliance and the agents of change that will bridge the gap to viable alternatives that provide long-term solutions while also providing additional economic, environmental, social, and political benefits. The perfect storm, coming soon to the planet where you live. The forecast is daunting, but if you see it coming, you can plan. So, why don't we see this coming? Well, most of the data available is in the form of small bits and pieces that, like puzzle pieces, when viewed individually, do not make a lot of sense. It's only when you assemble them all that the real picture becomes clear. And sometimes the pieces don't even fit, they belong to a different puzzle. And if that isn't enough, we are constantly bombarded with an endless barrage of noise. So, what is this perfect storm I'm talking about? Well, let me put some of the pieces together for you. This is an example of synergy, but I don't mean that in a good way. So here are the basic elements. In the first corner, we have policy and government, which includes unrestricted capitalism, monopolies, trade agreements that benefit only a few, non-representative taxation, political finance corruption, failing infrastructure, and ineffective federal agencies. In the second corner, we have business, which includes externalizing costs, a war on regulation, profit at the expense of the economy, environment and quality of life, focus on stock valuation over product and service. And in corner 3, we have our society and culture, which includes an education system designed by industrialists over a century ago to produce workers who don't question orders, consumerism, self-absorption, and media-saturated people just trying to survive. In the final corner, we have the environment. Climate change is speeding up even as you hear the sound of my voice, and we live in a closed system with nowhere else to go. Add it all together, and you have the makings of a perfect storm. Throughout history, there have been periods of progress and investment preceding periods of prosperity for the general population, including expansion of the middle class. However, with so much general abundance, those in power tend to get greedy and take action to make sure an ever-increasing portion of wealth flows to them. In so doing, the exchange of money that makes the economy thrive becomes more and more restricted. Eventually, inevitably, the privileged few hold so much of the resources out of circulation that their weight collapses the system, leading to their downfall and a bloody revolution. In the ensuing chaos, a new regime is formed, and the process starts all over again. We need to change our focus from wealth concentration to rebuilding the economic engine that sustains us, innovates solutions, creates jobs, and grows our economy. So why don't we just shrug, let it collapse, accept the inevitable revolving cycle, and move on? Well, let's take a look at how this time is a little different from the ones before. Have you seen this infographic? Take a moment to absorb this. The Earth is 4.6 billion years old. If we scale that to 46 years, we humans have been here for 4 hours. Our industrial revolution began 1 minute ago, and in that time we have destroyed more than 50% of the world's forests. That is not sustainable. We can't afford another revolution. We don't have time. Clean water and air are vital to our survival, and yet they are probably at the top of the list of externalized costs. 50% of our oxygen-producing trees are already gone. Only 3% of our Earth's water is fresh water, and we are polluting it at an alarming rate. And our population is expected to grow from 7 billion to over 9 billion people by 2050. And here's an example of what else is going on in the world. Asda, a wholly owned subsidiary of Walmart and the largest grocer chain in the UK, commissioned a review of their supply chain risk. They found that only 5% of their supply chain for fresh produce was not at risk from climate change, which means 95% is at risk. That's pretty significant. And it also means that corporations are starting to look for other answers. They have to know they can keep food on their shelves for their customers. And they're not the only ones. EY, in reporting on trends in corporate sustainability, had this to say. As extreme weather combines with environmental realities, companies are recognizing that corporate sustainability and access to natural resources are inextricably linked. And with water being the number one concern, 51% of their survey respondents said they anticipated their company's core business objectives to be affected by natural resource shortages in the next 3 to 5 years. Albert Einstein said that insanity is doing the same thing again and again while expecting a different outcome. I think we know what revolution looks like, so what we need is evolution. And in order to evolve, we need an agent of change. We can take the current need, use it to communicate, connect, and unite us, thereby making space for a transition in which we can learn, adapt, plan, and act. And then we can focus on community, education, acceptance, and sustainability, allowing us to evolve into a new way of being. So, up until now, we sound pretty much like every other sustainability nonprofit. But now let's talk about how we're different. What do we do that's different? Let's start with a little background. Here are a lot of numbers that really just serve to paint a picture of how the innovative small to mid-sized business is the real economic engine in America. With the deregulation, tax cuts, and supply-side economics put into place during the 1980s, we have been systematically dismantling this engine for decades. Not to mention overturning the Glass-Steagall Act, which was put in place after the stock market crash of 1929, and the change in the way we calculate the Consumer Price Index to keep our inflation numbers artificially low. All of this contributes to not seeing the economic recovery that we should. You cannot drive the economy with policies or stock performance or by locking up all the resources. The economy can only be driven by business and the flow of money created by doing business. Small and mid-sized business is our agent of change. So, how do we support it? And to be successful, the small to mid-sized business needs to attract a continuous stream of profitable business. But even when these innovative companies are technically superior, it's difficult to compete with large corporations when it comes to developing market access, building relationships, and messaging. In order for these agents of change to succeed, there needs to be an additional piece currently missing from the puzzle. Then there's the matter of market access. The perception is that these traditional markets are where the focus for customer acquisition should be. But in reality, none of these sectors are early adopters, nor are they investing in massive infrastructure upgrades. In addition, they typically contract with large multinational corporations rather than the small to mid-sized providers. However, there are developing markets where there is a need for innovative solutions that can make a big impact. But it can be challenging for the small to mid-sized business to find the funding as well as the opportunities. It is here that we need to focus our rebuilding efforts. So what does CTTA do? We build coalitions. We have established that small and mid-sized businesses hold the key to change if there is an opportunity in a market. We have established that there needs to be some pieces to the puzzle identified and developed. What we have not addressed is the perception that only large corporations can provide the resources in conjunction with the government to address the complicated problems. It is often considered less risky to contract with a large, well-known company, and while that company may be great at what they do, by developing a coalition of businesses, you can bring a wider variety of expertise, management, and innovation together, creating synergies that typically don't exist within a single organization. So we've talked about how small innovative businesses joined in coalitions with others, creating synergies together, can make a meaningful change. But how do these companies find each other and come up with the solutions that are beyond their area of expertise? How do they even know what the problems are? Who's going to vision the solutions to these complex problems and assemble the team to address them? Government might see the problems, but building the business coalitions is outside their purview. Large corporations could theoretically, but they are typically focused on their existing lines of business without a lot of crossover. In all the time we've been doing this work, we have yet to find anyone else doing what CETA does, and no matter how many others like us come into being in the future, there will always be plenty of work to go around. What exactly does an agent of coordination do? The agent of coordination identifies the problem, comes up with a concept for a solution, and verifies that the solution is viable. Then they identify the needed resources and reach out to the companies who can provide the necessary parts, validate their expertise and willingness to participate, and then coordinate them into a team. So here's what our process looks like. We identify, understand, research, and explore the problem. Then we brainstorm, research, verify, and identify funding for the solution concept. We reach out to potential partners and guide them through the qualification, validation, and integration process. And then we help get the project implemented by coordinating the planning, communication, and funding. And the connecting and communicating continues until the project is complete. Business used to be a basic cycle of find a need, innovate, productize, sell, profit, rinse, and repeat. Getting funding for a business that isn't planning to be bought out by a large corporation or go public can be daunting. Identifying and accessing funding for projects can also be challenging. It requires creativity and hard work and no small amount of out-of-the-box thinking. However, it can be done. Albert Einstein also said that we cannot solve problems by using the same thinking we did to create them. So, how do we find these innovative companies and turn them into solution partners? This is a brief look at how CETA acquires new members. The goal is identifying and recruiting companies that will be creating the technologies we need to address the issues of today and lay the foundation of tomorrow. Above competency and profitability, there are other equally important factors CETA looks for. Innovation, capacity, integrity, communication, ability and willingness to work as part of a team to address complex issues, transparency, the drive to succeed, vision, ingrained understanding of mutually beneficial partnerships, and a track record of success. And the larger the pool of members, the more we can accomplish. This gives you an idea of the process CETA performs in identifying potential members. It is an integrated process that includes existing members' engagements and input in the pre-interview assessment process. The interview is continually assessed to improve the probability of getting the right companies integrated into the CETA membership. It's a process that requires a lot of sifting to find what we're looking for. The yellow line is how many companies in a given sector we reach out to. Many more never respond to a request for contact. The light green line represents companies that begin the process but do not complete it. The blue line are those that make it to the interview process. You note that in power sector nobody has gotten past that point. The dark green line represents companies who have made it through the interview and have integrated into the membership. No process is perfect, of course, and the red line represents companies who are no longer members because they failed to perform once they were given an opportunity. As you can see, we put a lot of work into it. And these are the exemplary and innovative member companies that have met the standard. CASA is an example of a food and water security project that CETA envisioned and is in the process of implementing. This story is an example of how a seed is planted and grows into something totally unexpected. It was really just a conversation with someone we knew, and we sat down one day over lunch, and he explained what he'd experienced in his work with the Mexican government. He was coming at it from a "do you have any products you can recommend to them" point of reference. But we saw this as a bigger problem and imagined a solution that could address the core underlying issues, not just put a band-aid. And as the solution began to take shape, we realized it would be something that could be modified to almost any location that had a similar need. So we set to work to design a solution. It's a well-conceived, sustainable model where all parties and the environment benefit. It was designed first and foremost to be a profitable business endeavor to provide the region with jobs and economic resilience. It will produce food and fresh water, reduce water use, generate energy, clean up an aquifer, reestablish agriculture in a region that has lost its agriculture, restore the land from desertification, and use local waste in both energy production and soil amendments, not to mention planting some trees. And we expect that there will be more synergies come to light as we work our way toward completion of this project. Any successful project requires outreach and relationship building with stakeholders that can make or break your efforts. To ignore this part is to guarantee unnecessary difficulties and potential failure. So, we set out to create the relationships that would make this project a success. And these are the member companies who eventually became the CASA Group, a group of amazing companies and wonderful, innovative, competent, dedicated people. So, in closing, it is these thoughts that drive us to do this work, and we want to help create others like us, because if not us, who? And if not now, when? We can do this if we do it together. Thank you for your time.